The blazing sun beat down mercilessly as Beatrice Patterson clutched her wedding dress to her chest, tears streaming down her dirt-smudged face. Just hours ago, she had been a hopeful bride. Now she was abandoned in the vast New Mexico desert, betrayed by the man who had sworn to love her until death parted them. It was 1875, and Beatrice, or Bea as most called her, had traveled west from Philadelphia with dreams of marriage and a new life. Her fiancé, Leonard Gibbs, had written such beautiful letters describing his prosperous ranch outside Santa Fe. What he hadn't mentioned was his gambling problem, his existing wife in Albuquerque, or his plan to rob Bea of her family jewelry before abandoning her in the desert when she discovered his lies. "Water," she croaked, her throat parched and swollen. The elegant white dress she'd brought all the way from Pennsylvania had become her curse, the heavy fabric and tight corset trapping heat against her body. Her small traveling case lay open beside her, ransacked of anything valuable. Leonard had even taken her canteen. The sound of hoofbeats made her heart leap. Through the shimmering heat waves, Bea saw a figure on horseback approaching. Her initial relief quickly turned to fear. In this untamed territory, a lone woman might face worse than thirst. The rider slowed his Palomino stallion as he neared. Tall and broad-shouldered, his face shadowed by a wide-brimmed hat, he regarded her with piercing blue eyes. "Madam," he said simply, dismounting in one fluid motion, "you look to be in a bad way." "Please," Bea whispered, her voice barely audible. "Water." Without hesitation, he unhooked a canteen from his saddle and approached, kneeling beside her. He wore dusty denims, a faded blue shirt, and a leather vest. A gun belt hung low on his hips, but his movements were gentle as he supported her head, helping her drink. "Easy now," he cautioned as she gulped desperately. "Too fast will make you sick." The water was warm but felt like heaven against her parched throat. When she had taken enough, he eased her back against the rock where she had sought meager shade. "Name's Wade Ironwood," he said, studying her with concern. "What in God's name are you doing out here alone dressed like that?" Bea closed her eyes momentarily, gathering her strength. "Beatrice Patterson, I was to be married today." Wade's expression darkened. "And your groom left you here to die," she nodded weakly, unable to speak the full humiliation of her circumstances. Wade Ironwood surveyed the empty desert around them, his jaw tight with anger. Then his eyes softened as he looked back at her. "Miss Patterson, I'm taking you to safety." "Can you ride?" "I think so," she said, though in truth she wasn't certain she could stand. Wade efficiently packed her scattered belongings into her case, then helped her to her feet. The world spun alarmingly, and she would have fallen if not for his strong arms catching her. "Maybe not," he murmured. In one smooth motion, he lifted her, cradling her against his chest. She felt the steady beat of his heart as he carried her to his horse. "Whiskey here is gentle, but we'll ride double," he explained, settling her sideways across the saddle before mounting behind her. One arm held her securely while the other took the reins. As they began to move, Bea fought against the waves of exhaustion threatening to overwhelm her. "Where are we going?" she managed to ask. "My ranch," Wade replied. "It's about 2 hours' ride. You need rest and proper care." Bea wanted to ask more questions, but the gentle rocking motion of the horse combined with her exhaustion pulled her toward unconsciousness. The last thing she remembered was the feeling of safety as Wade's arm tightened protectively around her. "I've got you, Miss Patterson," his deep voice rumbled. "You're safe now." As darkness claimed her, Beatrice couldn't have known that the cowboy who had just saved her life would soon capture her heart. When Bea next opened her eyes, she was lying in a clean, comfortable bed. Sunlight streamed through curtained windows, illuminating a modest but tidy bedroom. The walls were adorned with simple wooden furniture and a colorful quilt covered her. She realized she was wearing a soft cotton nightgown rather than her wedding dress. "You're awake," said a female voice. Bea turned to see an older woman with silver-streaked hair and kind eyes rising from a chair in the corner. "I'm Martha Sullivan, the housekeeper here at Ironwood Ranch." the woman explained, approaching the bed and pressing a cool hand to Bee's forehead. You had us worried, dear. 2 days with fever is no small matter. 2 days. Bee tried to sit up, but weakness forced her back against the pillows. Easy now, Martha cautioned. The doctor says you suffered severe heat exhaustion, another hour out there. She didn't finish the sentence, but her meaning was clear. Mr. Ironwood, Bee asked. Is he here? Wade's been pacing outside this door like a caged mountain lion whenever he's not seeing to ranch business, Martha said with a small smile. He'll be mighty relieved you're awake. Let me fetch you some broth first, then I'll tell him. When Martha left, Bee took stock of her situation. Her throat no longer burned with thirst, but her body ached everywhere. More painful were the memories of Leonard's betrayal. How could she have been so foolish? The signs had been there in his hasty courtship through letters, his eagerness to have her bring her family heirlooms west, his constant excuses for why they couldn't meet his friends upon her arrival. Martha returned with a tray holding a steaming bowl of broth and a cup of tea. Small sips, she instructed, helping Bee into a sitting position. Your body needs to remember how to accept nourishment again. The broth was flavorful and warming. As Bee's strength began to return, Martha shared information about where she was. Ironwood Ranch lies 20 miles outside of Silverdale. It's not the biggest spread in the territory, but it's one of the most successful. Wade runs it with just a handful of hands and more determination than 10 ordinary men. He lives alone, Bee asked, immediately embarrassed by her curiosity. Martha's eyes twinkled. He does. Had offers from half the eligible women in the territory, but Wade's particular. Says he's waiting for something special. She paused. Now, if you're feeling up to it, he'd like to speak with you. Bee suddenly became conscious of her appearance. My hair, I've kept it brushed while you were fevered, Martha assured her. You look fine, dear, far better than when Wade brought you in, half dead and covered in desert dust. A knock sounded at the door and Martha called, Come in, Wade. She's decent and alert. Wade Ironwood entered, removing his hat as he crossed the threshold. In the clear light of day, Bee could see him properly for the first time. He was younger than she had initially thought, perhaps 30, with sun-bronzed skin and dark hair that curled slightly at his collar. His features were strong, a straight nose, defined jawline, and those startling blue eyes that seemed to see straight through pretense. Miss Patterson, he said, his deep voice filling the room. It's good to see you awake. Mr. Ironwood, she replied, suddenly conscious of being in bed while speaking to him. I don't know how to thank you for saving my life. He moved closer, though still maintaining a respectful distance. No thanks needed. Any decent man would have done the same. Perhaps, Martha interjected, gathering the tray, but not every man would have ridden through the night to fetch Dr. Miller or donated blood when the doctor said it was needed. Bee's eyes widened. You gave me your blood, a flush crept up Wade's neck. The doctor said it was necessary. You were very weak. Martha excused herself with a knowing smile, leaving them alone. Mr. Ironwood, Wade, please. Wade, Bee amended. I owe you my life. I have no words adequate to express my gratitude. He shook his head. What happened out there, Miss Patterson? Who left you to die in the desert? The shame of her situation hit Bee anew. My fiancé, Leonard Gibbs. We were to be married in Santa Fe. When I arrived from Philadelphia, he convinced me to elope immediately. We were traveling to what he claimed was a special place for the ceremony when I found a letter in his jacket. It was from his wife. Wade's expression darkened. His wife, in Albuquerque, Bee confirmed, tears threatening. When I confronted him, he admitted everything. He had no ranch, no prospects. He'd been writing to women back east, promising marriage to whoever had the most assets to bring west. Her voice broke. When I realized the truth, he attacked me, stole my family jewelry, and left me there to die. Wade's hands clenched into fists. This Gibbs, do you know where he was headed? He mentioned Tucson, she said quietly. But please, don't trouble yourself further on my account. You've already done too much. Wade sat in the chair Martha had vacated. Miss Patterson, Beatrice, or Bee if you prefer. A small smile touched his lips. "B, I need to ask what your plans are now." The question hit her like a physical blow. In truth, she had no plans, no prospects. Her parents were both dead, her small inheritance spent on the journey west. Leonard had taken the valuable jewelry that might have funded her return to Philadelphia. "I don't know," she admitted. "I have no family left in Philadelphia and no means to return there regardless." Wade nodded thoughtfully. "Well, you're welcome to stay here until you're fully recovered and decide what you want to do. Martha enjoys the company and there's plenty of room." "I couldn't impose. It's no imposition," he said firmly. "And when you're stronger, if you'd like to earn your keep, Martha could use help with household matters. She's not as young as she once was, though don't tell her I said so." Relief washed over B. "A temporary reprieve, at least. Thank you. I promise I won't stay longer than necessary." Wade rose. "Rest now. We can talk more when you're stronger." At the door he paused. "One more thing, B. This man Gibbs, if I ever cross paths with him, he'll answer for what he did to you." The intensity in his eyes made her shiver. Before she could respond, he was gone, leaving only the lingering scent of leather and pine. Over the next week, B regained her strength. Martha proved to be both a skilled nurse and a fountain of information about Ironwood Ranch and its owner. "Wade came west as a boy with his father," Martha told her as they prepared vegetables for supper. "William Ironwood was a hard man but fair, built this ranch from nothing after the war. When he died 5 years ago, Wade took over and has nearly doubled its size since." "He seems very capable," Bea observed, trying to sound casual. Martha shot her a knowing look. "More than capable. He reads Shakespeare by lamplight and can calculate figures faster than the bank manager in town, not what most expect from a rancher." Wade himself was often absent during daylight hours, busy with ranch operations. But he made a point to dine with Bea and Martha each evening, his manner unfailingly polite if somewhat reserved. By her 10th day at the ranch, Bea felt well enough to explore beyond the house. She found Wade in the corral training a spirited young mare. She watched, mesmerized as he moved with the animal, his voice low and soothing. "She's beautiful," Bea said when he noticed her presence. Wade smiled, the expression transforming his serious face. "She's got spirit. Those are always the best horses once they learn to trust you." "What's her name?" "Haven't decided yet." He secured the mare and approached the fence where Bea stood. "How are you feeling today?" "Much better. Strong enough to be useful, I hope." Wade studied her. "Martha says you've been helping with the cooking and mending. Small repayment for your kindness." A comfortable silence fell between them. In the distance, cattle grazed on rolling grassland, and beyond them, mountains rose against a brilliant blue sky. It was beautiful in a wild, untamed way that Philadelphia could never match. "I never thanked you properly," Wade said suddenly. "For the pie you made yesterday. Apple's my favorite." Bea smiled. "Martha told me. It's the least I could do." Another silence, this one charged with something Bea couldn't quite name. "Would you like to learn to ride?" Wade asked. "Proper riding, not just sitting on a horse. If you're staying in New Mexico territory, it's a skill you'll need." "I'd like that very much," Bea replied, surprised by his offer. Wade nodded decisively. "We'll start tomorrow. I've got a gentle gelding that would suit you." That night, Bea wrote in the journal Martha had given her. Her entry ended with a confession she barely admitted to herself. Despite the circumstances that had brought her to Ironwood Ranch, she was beginning to feel something for its owner that went beyond gratitude. True to his word, Wade began teaching Bea to ride the following morning. The gelding, a dappled gray named Smoke, was indeed gentle but responsive. Under Wade's patient instruction, Bea quickly progressed from nervous uncertainty to genuine enjoyment. "You're a natural," Wade commented as they rode side by side across a meadow carpeted with wildflowers. "Most Easterners take months to develop the seat you've mastered in days." Bea laughed, delighted by both the compliment and the freedom of movement astride the horse. In Philadelphia, ladies rode side saddle or not at all. Here, practicality trumped propriety. I had an excellent teacher, she replied, and motivation to learn. This land seems designed for horseback. Wade nodded in agreement. My father used to say a man without a horse in the West might as well be without legs. Tell me more about your father, Bee encouraged. In their daily rides, she had discovered that Wade, normally reticent, would open up while on horseback. He was born in Tennessee, fought for the Union in the war, came west afterward looking for a fresh start. Wade's expression grew distant. He built this ranch with nothing but determination and hard work, taught me everything I know about cattle, horses, and standing by your word. And your mother, a shadow crossed his face. She died when I was 8, influenza. I barely remember her except that she sang while she worked and had hands that always smelled of lavender. I'm sorry, Bee said softly. I lost my mother young as well. It leaves a hole nothing quite fills. Wade glanced at her, surprise and recognition in his eyes. Yes, exactly that, a hole. They rode in companionable silence until reaching a ridge overlooking a vast expanse of the ranch. Wade reined in his horse and Bee followed suit. This is my favorite spot on the property, he confessed. You can see almost all of Ironwood Ranch from here. Bee took in the panoramic view. Herds of cattle dotted the grasslands, a creek cut a silver path through the landscape, and in the distance, the ranch house and outbuildings formed a tidy cluster. It's magnificent, she breathed. You've built something remarkable here. My father started it, Wade corrected. I'm just continuing his work. From what Martha tells me, you've done far more than continue. You've transformed the ranch into one of the most successful in the territory. Wade looked uncomfortable with the praise. I've been fortunate. Fortune favors the prepared and hardworking, Bee countered, remembering her father's favorite saying. A smile tugged at Wade's lips. Your father say that? How did you know? My father had similar expressions. Seems our fathers might have had some things in common. The moment felt intimate, a connection deeper than their daily interactions had yet allowed. Bee found herself studying Wade's profile against the bright sky, noting the strength in his features and the tiny laugh lines at the corners of his eyes. As if sensing her scrutiny, Wade turned to meet her gaze. Something passed between them, unspoken but powerful. Bee felt her cheeks warm and looked away first. We should head back, Wade said, his voice slightly rougher than before. Storm clouds building to the west. That evening, the predicted storm arrived with spectacular force. Lightning illuminated the ranch house in stark flashes, and thunder rattled the windows. After dinner, when Martha retired early with a headache, Bee found herself alone with Wade in the sitting room. Do you mind? He asked, holding up a book. I usually read in the evenings. Not at all, Bee replied, returning to her mending. What are you reading? Wade showed her the cover, the complete works of William Shakespeare. Martha mentioned you enjoy Shakespeare. Do you have a favorite play? Wade considered the question seriously. Much Ado About Nothing, perhaps, though The Tempest comes close. You prefer the comedies, then? I appreciate how they find light even in difficult circumstances, he explained. The tragedies are powerful, but I see enough real tragedy in life. Bee nodded, understanding. I favor Twelfth Night myself. Another tale of mistaken identity and love found in unexpected places, Wade observed. After a pause, he asked, would you like me to read aloud? My father used to read to me on stormy nights. The invitation touched Bee deeply. I'd like that very much. Wade opened the book to Twelfth Night and began to read. His deep voice gave life to Shakespeare's words, rising and falling with the rhythm of the verse. Bee's hands stilled on her mending as she was transported by the combination of the timeless words and Wade's resonant voice. When he reached Viola's speech about concealing her love, he paused, looking up to find Bee watching him intently. Their eyes held for a long moment before a particularly loud thunderclap broke the spell. It's getting late, Wade said, closing the book reluctantly. And you've had a full day of riding. Yes, Bee agreed, though she was reluctant for the evening to end. Thank you for reading. You have a gift for bringing the words to life. Wade escorted her to her bedroom door. Good night, Bee, he said softly. "Good night, Wade." As she prepared for bed, Bea acknowledged to herself that her feelings for Wade Ironwood had grown far beyond gratitude. In just 3 weeks, this quiet, thoughtful cowboy had come to occupy her thoughts and, increasingly, her heart. The question was whether he felt anything similar for her and what future could possibly exist for them if he did. 2 days later, Bea's peaceful existence at Ironwood Ranch was disrupted by the arrival of a visitor. She was in the kitchen with Martha, kneading bread dough, when the sound of approaching horses drew their attention. Martha peered out the window. "It's Sheriff Davis from Silverdale, and he's not alone." Wade, who had been reviewing ledgers at the kitchen table, rose immediately. "Stay inside," he instructed before stepping out onto the porch. Through the window, Bea watched as Wade greeted the sheriff, a stocky man with a graying mustache. Behind him sat another rider whose face Bea couldn't see clearly. "What's happening?" she asked Martha. The older woman shook her head. "Don't know, but Wade looks concerned." Minutes later, the kitchen door opened and Wade entered with the sheriff. "Bea," Wade said gently, "Sheriff Davis would like to speak with you." Bea wiped her flour-covered hands on her apron, anxiety rising. "Of course." "Miss Patterson," the sheriff began, removing his hat, "I understand from Mr. Ironwood that you had a rather unfortunate experience with a man named Leonard Gibbs." Hearing that name sent a chill through Bea. "Yes, he abandoned me in the desert after stealing my possessions." The sheriff nodded grimly. "We've been tracking Gibbs for some time. He's wanted in 3 territories for similar schemes, though this is the first time he's left a woman to die." "Have you found him?" Bea asked. "No, madam, but we found something else." The sheriff turned toward the door. "You can come in now, Mrs. Miller." A woman entered the kitchen. She was perhaps 40, with streaks of gray in her dark hair and lines of worry etched around her mouth and eyes. "Miss Patterson," the sheriff continued, "this is Harriet Miller." "She has reason to believe she might be Mrs. Harriet Gibbs." Bea's knees weakened and she gripped the edge of the table. "You're Leonard's wife," the woman nodded wearily. "One of them, it seems. I married Leonard in Kansas City 4 years ago. He disappeared with my savings 6 months later. I've been tracking him ever since." Wade moved to Bea's side, his presence steadying. "Mrs. Miller saw the wanted poster the sheriff put up after I reported what happened to you. She recognized Gibbs's description." "Do you have a likeness of him?" the sheriff asked Bea. "No," Bea replied. "But I can describe him in detail." For the next hour, Bea and Harriet Miller compared notes on Leonard Gibbs. The similarities in their experiences were striking. The charming courtship, the requests for financial investments in fictional business ventures, the sudden disappearance. "He always targets women with money but no close family," Harriet explained. "Widows, orphans, women estranged from their relatives. He's remarkably skilled at identifying vulnerability." The shame Bea had carried over her gullibility began to lift as she realized how calculated Leonard's deception had been. "Sheriff," Wade asked, "what happens now?" "I'll add Miss Patterson's statement to the file. If we catch Gibbs, both ladies will be called to testify." He turned to Bea. "Would you be willing to do that, Miss Patterson?" "Yes," Bea said firmly. "I want him stopped before he hurts anyone else." After the sheriff departed, Harriet remained behind at Wade's invitation. "You're welcome to stay the night before returning to town," he offered. Over dinner, Harriet shared more of her story. After Leonard's disappearance, she had sold her remaining possessions and devoted herself to tracking him down. "People think I'm crazy," she admitted. "Chasing a man who clearly doesn't want me, but it's not about winning him back, it's about justice. And preventing him from doing to others what he did to me." Bea reached across the table to squeeze the older woman's hand. "I understand completely." That night, unable to sleep, Bea slipped outside to sit on the porch swing. The encounter with Harriet had stirred up painful memories, but also strengthened her resolve to move forward. "Mind if I join you?" She looked up to find Wade standing in the doorway, a blanket in his hands. "Please do," she replied. He settled beside her on the swing and draped the blanket over both their laps. The night was clear, stars scattered across the velvet sky like diamonds. "Are you all right?" Wade asked softly. "Today can't have been easy. Be considered the question seriously." "Strangely, I feel better than I have since it happened. Meeting Harriet, knowing I wasn't the only one deceived, it helps somehow." "You were never to blame," Wade said firmly. "Men like Gibbs are predators. They study their prey and strike when they're most vulnerable." "I know that now." Bee's hand found his under the blanket. "Thanks to you." Wade's fingers intertwined with hers, warm and reassuring. "Bee, there's something I've been wanting to ask you." Her heart quickened. "Yes, your plans. You've been here almost a month now. You're fully recovered, capable of moving on if you wished. Are you asking me to leave?" The thought sent a spike of panic through her. "No," he said quickly, "just the opposite. I'm asking hoping that you might consider staying, permanently." Bee stared at him, hardly daring to believe what she was hearing. "Wade, what exactly are you saying?" In the moonlight, she could see the uncertainty in his expression, so at odds with his usual confidence. "I'm saying that I've grown to care for you, Bee. More than I thought possible in such a short time. I know it's too soon after your ordeal and you may not feel the same way, but I do," Bee interrupted, her voice trembling with emotion. "Feel the same way, that is." Relief and joy transformed Wade's features. "You do." "From almost the beginning," she admitted. "But I was afraid it was just gratitude, or that you saw me as nothing more than someone to help." Wade's hand tightened around hers. "I admired your courage from the first moment I saw you in that desert. But what I've come to love is your kindness, your intelligence, your strength in the face of betrayal." "Love," Bee whispered. Wade nodded, his expression solemn. "I love you, Beatrice Patterson. I don't expect an answer now. Take all the time you need. Just know that there's a place for you here if you want it." Tears welled in Bee's eyes. "Wade Ironwood, I came west looking for a new beginning. I thought I'd found it with Leonard, but that was an illusion. This ranch, the life we could build together, this is real." Wade reached out to brush a tear from her cheek. "Is that a yes?" "It's a yes," Bee confirmed. "I love you too." Slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, Wade leaned forward and kissed her. It was gentle and brief, a promise rather than a demand. When they parted, Bee saw in his eyes all the future they might share. "We'll take things slowly," he promised. "Court properly, do things right." Bee smiled. "That sounds perfect." They remained on the porch swing until the moon was high, talking of their pasts and their hopes for the future, their hands never parting. The following morning, Harriet Miller departed for Silverdale with a promise to keep them informed of any developments in the search for Leonard Gibbs. Bee and Wade began their courtship in earnest, though little changed in their daily interactions except the openness with which they now expressed their growing affection. Martha, for her part, seemed unsurprised by the development. "About time," was her only comment when Wade formally announced their courtship. "I was beginning to think I'd need to lock you two in the root cellar to make you see what was right in front of your noses." As June bloomed into July, Bee's role at Ironwood Ranch evolved. No longer just a guest or even a helper, she began taking on responsibilities as if the ranch were already her home. She learned ranch accounting from Wade, studied animal husbandry, and even began accompanying him on business trips to Silverdale. It was during one such trip, 2 months after her arrival at the ranch, that their peaceful new life was disrupted. The general store in Silverdale was crowded with ranchers and townspeople when Bee and Wade entered to purchase supplies. While Wade discussed a large order with the proprietor, Bee browsed the fabric selection, considering material for new curtains in the sitting room. "Beatrice Patterson, is that you?" The voice froze Bee to the spot. She turned slowly to face Leonard Gibbs. He looked much as she remembered, handsome in a practiced way, with carefully styled hair and expensive clothes that suggested prosperity he didn't possess. His expression showed genuine shock at seeing her alive. "You," she said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. Leonard recovered quickly, glancing around to ensure no one was paying attention to their encounter. My dear, what a pleasant surprise. I feared the worst when we were separated. Separated, B repeated incredulously. You left me to die in the desert after stealing everything I owned. His smile turned cold. A serious accusation. Who would believe such a tale from a woman who followed a man she barely knew into the wilderness? Perhaps you suffered sunstroke and imagined the theft. B became aware of other customers beginning to notice their tense exchange. Leonard must have sensed it too, because he lowered his voice and leaned closer. I suggest you forget our unfortunate misunderstanding. I've established myself quite well in this community, and no one will take the word of an outsider over mine. Before B could respond, a shadow fell across them. Is there a problem here? Wade asked, his voice deceptively calm. Leonard straightened, assessing Wade with a practiced eye. Not at all, just greeting an old acquaintance. Leonard Gibbs, he extended his hand, which Wade ignored. Wade Ironwood, he replied coolly. Beatrice's fiancé. Leonard's expression flickered momentarily before his smooth facade returned. Fiancé, my congratulations. How fortunate for Beatrice to have found someone so quickly after our parting. Fortunate that I found her at all, Wade countered, considering you left her to die. Leonard's smile disappeared. I don't know what tales she's told you, Sheriff Davis, Wade called over his shoulder. We found him. B hadn't noticed the sheriff entering the store, but he approached swiftly, hand resting on his gun. Leonard Gibbs, the sheriff asked. Leonard took a step backward. There's been some mistake. My name is Lawrence Grantham. I only arrived in the territory last month. That's so. Sheriff Davis reached into his coat and withdrew a folded paper. Because I'm looking at a wanted poster with a description matching you perfectly. Wanted in Kansas, Colorado, and New Mexico territories for fraud, theft, and attempted murder. Leonard's hand moved toward his jacket, but Wade was faster. He caught Leonard's wrist in a grip that made the smaller man wince. I wouldn't, Wade said quietly. The sheriff quickly disarmed Leonard, finding both a Derringer pistol and B's missing locket in his pockets. My grandmother's, B gasped, recognizing the distinctive gold heart. That's all the confirmation I need, the sheriff said, producing handcuffs. Leonard Gibbs, you're under arrest. As the sheriff led Leonard away, the con man turned back toward B. This isn't over, he hissed. You'll regret this. Wade stepped protectively in front of B. The only thing she'll regret is ever having met you. Once Leonard was secured in the jail, B and Wade met with Sheriff Davis to formalize her statement. The sheriff confirmed that telegrams had been sent to Kansas City, where Harriet Miller was preparing to travel to testify. With your testimony and Mrs. Miller's, plus the stolen property found on his person, Gibbs will likely face a significant prison sentence, the sheriff assured them. On the ride back to the ranch, B was uncharacteristically quiet. Wade gave her the space to process the encounter, waiting until they were halfway home before speaking. Are you all right? He asked gently. B nodded slowly. It was strange seeing him again. For a moment I was back in that desert feeling helpless and betrayed. But you're not helpless anymore, Wade reminded her. No, she agreed, straightening in her saddle. I'm not, and oddly enough I feel grateful to him in a way. Wade raised an eyebrow. Grateful. If he hadn't abandoned me in the desert, I would never have met you. She smiled at Wade, the love she felt evident in her expression. Sometimes the worst moments in our lives lead us to the best. Wade reached across the space between their horses to take her hand. I'd still like to break his jaw for what he did to you. B laughed. As satisfying as that might be, I prefer knowing he'll face justice properly. That evening, after sharing the day's events with Martha, Wade suggested a walk under the stars. They strolled hand in hand to the ridge overlooking the ranch, now one of B's favorite spots as well. I had planned to wait longer, Wade said as they gazed at the moonlit landscape, but after today, I don't want to delay anymore. He turned to face her and, to B's surprise, knelt on one knee before her. From his pocket, he produced a small wooden box. Beatrice Patterson, these past months have shown me what I was missing all my life without knowing it. You've brought warmth and light to my home and my heart." He opened the box, revealing a delicate gold ring set with a single perfect diamond. "Will you marry me? Become my wife, my partner in all things?" Tears of joy spilled down Bee's cheeks. "Yes, Wade, with all my heart, yes." He slid the ring onto her finger, then stood and gathered her into his arms. Their kiss was deep and passionate, a promise of the life they would build together. "I should tell you," Wade murmured against her hair, "that I've already consulted with Reverend Thompson in Silverdale. He can marry us whenever we're ready." Bee laughed. "Confident of my answer, were you?" "Hopeful," Wade corrected, "and determined to do everything properly this time." They agreed on a wedding date 1 month hence, time enough for proper preparations, but not so long that they would need to wait through the coming fall and winter. News of Leonard Gibbs's arrest and the upcoming wedding between Wade Ironwood and Beatrice Patterson spread quickly through the territory. Letters of congratulation arrived from neighboring ranchers, and Martha threw herself into wedding preparations with enthusiasm. "Never thought I'd see Wade married," she confided to Bee as they prepared the wedding dress. "He was always so focused on the ranch, so determined to fulfill his father's legacy. You've helped him see there's more to life than work." "He's helped me just as much," Bee replied. "After Leonard, I thought I'd never trust a man again. Wade taught me that real love isn't about grand gestures or pretty words, it's about actions, consistency, and respect." 2 weeks before the wedding, Sheriff Davis rode out to the ranch with news. Leonard Gibbs had been transferred to the territorial prison to await trial, with additional charges filed as more victims came forward. Among them was a woman from Santa Fe who claimed to be his legal wife. "He'll face trial next month," the sheriff explained. "Given the evidence and number of charges, he's looking at 20 years at least." The news brought closure to that chapter of Bee's life. She could move forward with Wade knowing that Leonard would never again be able to harm another woman as he had harmed her. The wedding day dawned clear and bright in early September. The ranch hands had constructed an arbor near the ridge overlooking the property, and guests from throughout the territory gathered to witness the union. Reverend Thompson presided, his kind face beaming as Wade and Bee exchanged vows. "I, Wade William Ironwood, take you, Beatrice Ann Patterson, to be my lawfully wedded wife," Wade's strong voice carried across the assembled guests. "I promise to love, honor, and cherish you in good times and bad, in sickness and health, until death parts us." When Bee repeated her vows, her voice was clear and confident. This was no hasty decision, no desperate gamble, but a choice made with full knowledge of the man she was marrying. "By the power vested in me," Reverend Thompson concluded, "I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss your bride." Wade gathered Bee into his arms, his kiss tender but possessive. The guests erupted in cheers and applause. The celebration continued well into the evening with feasting, dancing, and toasts to the happy couple. As night fell, lanterns illuminated the yard, casting a golden glow over the festivities. "Mrs. Ironwood," Wade murmured in Bee's ear as they danced beneath the stars. "How does it feel?" "Perfect," she replied, her eyes shining with happiness. "Absolutely perfect." Later that night, alone in the master bedroom that was now theirs to share, Wade and Bee consummated their marriage with tender passion. Their union was everything Bee had dreamed of, gentle yet intense, built on trust and mutual desire. "I love you," Wade whispered as they lay entwined afterward. "From the moment I saw you in that desert, something in me knew you were meant to be mine." Bee traced the contours of his face in the moonlight. "And I was meant to find you. All the pain, all the betrayal, it led me to where I truly belong." Life as Mrs. Ironwood suited Bee perfectly. She embraced her role as ranch mistress with enthusiasm and skill, introducing innovations from her Eastern upbringing while respecting the established ways of the territory. Together, she and Wade expanded the ranch operations, adding sheep to their cattle holdings and establishing one of the region's first breeding programs for superior horses. Their partnership extended beyond business. They shared books and ideas, discussed politics and philosophy, and made decisions together as equals. Wade valued Bee's intelligence and perspective, never dismissing her suggestions because she was a woman a rarity in the 1870s West. A year after their wedding, Bee gave birth to their first child, a daughter they named Catherine Martha Ironwood. Wade proved to be a doting father, often carrying the infant with him around the ranch to learn the business early, as he put it. Martha, who had worried about being displaced by Wade's marriage, found herself elevated to the position of beloved grandmother figure. She moved into a comfortable cottage Wade built specifically for her near the main house, giving her independence while keeping her close to the family she loved. "I always knew Wade would find someone special," she told Bee one evening as they watched Wade teaching 2-year-old Catherine to identify constellations in the night sky. "But I never imagined he'd find someone as perfect for him as you. Or that I'd find a place that feels so completely like home," Bee added. "Sometimes I can hardly remember my life before Ironwood Ranch." News occasionally reached them of Leonard Gibbs. He had been convicted on all charges and sentenced to 25 years in the territorial prison. 3 years into his sentence, word came that he had died during a prison outbreak of typhoid fever. "Are you all right?" Wade asked when the news arrived. Bee considered the question carefully. "I feel nothing," she admitted. "Neither joy nor sorrow. He's simply part of a past that led me here." Their family grew again with the birth of twins William and James Ironwood when Catherine was 4. The ranch prospered under their joint management, becoming one of the most respected operations in the territory. Wade's innovative breeding programs gained national attention, while Bee's introduction of Eastern agricultural techniques improved their crop yields significantly. 10 years after their wedding, as they sat on the porch swing watching their children play in the yard, Wade turned to Bee with a contemplative expression. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if I hadn't ridden that particular route that day, if I hadn't found you in the desert?" Bee shook her head. "I believe we were meant to find each other, perhaps not in such dramatic circumstances, but somehow our paths would have crossed." Wade smiled, the lines around his eyes deepening. At 40, he was more handsome than ever to Bee's eyes, with touches of silver beginning to appear at his temples. "Well, I'm grateful every day that I chose that route," he said, pulling her close. "You and our children are the greatest blessings of my life." "And you of mine," Bee replied, resting her head on his shoulder. "My cowboy who rode up with a canteen and his heart." As the sun set over Ironwood Ranch, painting the sky in brilliant hues of gold and crimson, Bee reflected on the journey that had brought her here. From desperate abandonment in the desert to the fullness of love, family, and purpose, it was a path she could never have imagined but would never wish to change. What had begun as the worst day of her life had led to the best years she could have hoped for. And as Wade's arm tightened around her shoulders, Bee knew with absolute certainty that their love story, born in the harshest circumstances of the Wild West, would continue to flourish for all the years to come. 5 years later, Ironwood Ranch had grown into one of the largest operations in the territory. Wade and Bee's reputation for fair business practices and innovation drew buyers from as far as Chicago and San Francisco. Their breeding program for both horses and cattle had set new standards in the industry, and their methods were being adopted by ranchers throughout the West. On the 15th anniversary of the day Wade had found Bee in the desert, they held a celebration for family and friends. The ranch had grown not just in size but in community. Ranch hands and their families now lived in comfortable housing on the property, and a small schoolhouse had been built for the children. "I never imagined this," Wade admitted as they watched the festivities from the porch of their expanded home. "When my father died, I thought my life would be just work and solitude. And I never imagined finding such happiness after such betrayal," Bee replied, leaning against his shoulder. At 38, she had matured into a woman of quiet confidence and graceful strength. The desert ordeal that had nearly claimed her life was now a distant memory, overshadowed by 15 years of love and partnership. Their children Catherine, now 14, and the twins William and James, 10, had been joined by a fourth child, Elizabeth, who at 6 was the image of her mother with her father's bright blue eyes. Martha, now in her 70s but still sharp as ever, sat nearby in her favorite rocking chair, supervising the young ranch hands who competed to bring her refreshments. "Remember when it was just the 3 of us?" she asked with a chuckle. "So quiet you could hear a pin drop." "Now look at this wonderful chaos," Wade smiled, wrapping an arm around Bee's waist. "I wouldn't trade it for anything." As twilight fell, the celebration moved to the large barn that had been cleared for dancing. Lanterns hung from the rafters, casting a warm glow over the gathering. Wade led Bee onto the floor for the first dance, moving with the same fluid grace that had first caught her attention all those years ago. "Mrs. Ironwood," he murmured, "have I told you today how beautiful you are?" Bee laughed. "Only twice, Mr. Ironwood. You're slipping in your old age." "Then let me remedy that immediately." He pulled her closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. "You are more beautiful to me now than the day we met. Every line, every silver hair there, all part of our story together." Later that night, after the guests had departed and the children were asleep, Bee and Wade walked hand in hand to their special ridge. The full moon illuminated the landscape, transforming the familiar terrain into a silver dreamscape. "I have something for you," Wade said, reaching into his pocket. He withdrew a small velvet box and placed it in her hand. Inside, Bee found a gold locket not her grandmother's, which had been returned to her after Leonard's arrest, but a new one crafted with exquisite detail. "Open it," Wade encouraged. The locket contained 2 small portraits, on one side Wade as he had looked the day they met, on the other Bee in her wedding gown. "To remember where we started and how far we've come," Wade explained. "And on the back." Bee turned the locket over to find an inscription. From desert despair to enduring love, tears welled in her eyes. "It's perfect, Wade, thank you." He fastened the chain around her neck, his fingers lingering on her skin. "I asked a surveyor to make the official documentation last month. This ridge, our special place, is now officially named Beatrice Point on all territorial maps." "Wade," Bee gasped. "How did you manage that?" He grinned. "Being one of the territory's largest landowners has its advantages. Besides, the surveyor owed me a favor after I helped him find his lost mule last winter." Bee laughed, touching the locket that now rested against her heart. "You continue to surprise me, even after 15 years. "I plan to keep surprising you for at least 50 more, Wade promised, drawing her into his arms. "Though I admit, it gets harder to find new ways to show how much I love you." "You show me every day," Bee assured him, "in 1,000 small ways that mean more than grand gestures ever could." As they stood together on the ridge that would forever bear Bee's name, the ranch spread out before them like a testament to what they had built together, not just the land and buildings, but a family. A community, a legacy of love that had begun with a desperate encounter in the desert. "Do you ever wonder about the chances?" Wade asked suddenly. "That I would ride that exact route on that exact day when you needed help most?" Bee considered the question. "I used to think it was mere coincidence, incredible luck. Now I believe it was something more. Perhaps not divine intervention exactly, but destiny," Wade supplied, "as if all our previous choices were leading us to that moment." "Yes," Bee agreed. "Destiny?" They remained on the ridge until the moon was high overhead, reminiscing about their years together and planning for the future. Ironwood Ranch would pass to their children someday, but for now, there was still so much they wanted to accomplish together. As they finally turned to walk back to the house, Wade paused to look out over their domain once more. "From a canteen to a kingdom," he mused. "Not bad for a simple cowboy." Bee smiled up at him, her heart full of the same love that had blossomed in the most unlikely circumstances 15 years before. And not bad for a bride left in the desert. Hand in hand, They made their way down the ridge toward home, their path illuminated by moonlight and the knowledge that in finding each other, they had found everything. The years continued to be kind to the Ironwoods. As New Mexico moved toward statehood, Wade's influence in territorial politics grew. He served on committees shaping the new state's agricultural policies and water rights laws, while Bea became a respected advocate for educational opportunities, particularly for young women. Their children flourished. Catherine, intelligent and determined like both her parents, attended one of the first universities to accept women students. The twins, William and James, grew into fine young men who combined their father's ranching skills with their mother's business acumen. Elizabeth, the youngest, revealed an artistic talent that led to her paintings being displayed in galleries as far away as Denver. On their 25th wedding anniversary, with their children grown and the ranch more prosperous than ever, Wade surprised Bea with a journey east, her first return to Philadelphia, since she had left as a young bride to be nearly 3 decades earlier. "It's so different," Bea marveled as they toured the city of her birth. "And yet, in some ways, exactly the same." They visited her parents' graves, now well tended thanks to arrangements Wade had secretly made years earlier. They attended the theater, dined in fine restaurants, and met with business contacts who had been purchasing Ironwood beef and horses for years without ever meeting the ranchers in person. "Do you miss it?" Wade asked as they stood on a busy street corner watching the parade of fashionable city dwellers. "The conveniences, the culture," Bea shook her head decisively. "Not for a moment. This was my past, but the ranch is my home. You and our children are my world." When they returned to New Mexico, now officially a state, they found changes waiting. The railroad had finally extended a line near their property, making transportation of goods significantly easier. Automobiles were beginning to appear even in rural areas, though Wade stubbornly preferred his horses. "Some traditions are worth preserving," he insisted when James suggested purchasing an automobile for ranch business. "Besides, a car can't find its way home if you fall asleep in the saddle." As they entered their 3rd decade together, Bea and Wade welcomed grandchildren into their lives. Catherine married a professor she had met at university, and their son William married the daughter of a neighboring rancher, combining 2 of the largest properties in the state. Martha, who had been like a mother to both Bea and Wade, lived to the remarkable age of 92, lucid and spirited until her final days. Her passing was mourned throughout the region, and her funeral was attended by hundreds who had known her kindness over the years. "She saved my life too, in her way," Wade confided to Bea after the funeral. "After my father died, I was lost. Martha kept me anchored, gave me purpose beyond just working myself to exhaustion. She was the first to see what was developing between us," Bea remembered with a sad smile. "Said she knew from the moment you carried me into the house that I wasn't leaving any time soon." On the 30th anniversary of their meeting, Wade and Bea rode out to the spot in the desert where he had found her. The landscape had changed, little, still harsh, still beautiful in its stark way. "It looks smaller somehow," Bea observed as they dismounted. "Less threatening." Wade nodded, surveying the area. "To think that the most important moment of my life happened in such a desolate place." They had brought a small stone marker which Wade now placed at the exact spot where Bea had been sitting when he found her. The inscription read simply, "Beginnings, 1875, for future generations to know the story," Wade explained. "How the Ironwood legacy truly began." Bea touched the marker, then reached for Wade's hand. At 60, his hair was now more silver than brown, his face weathered by decades in the sun. To Bea, he was more handsome than ever, each line representing a year they had spent together. "You remember what you first thought when you saw me?" she asked. Wade's eyes crinkled with his smile. "I thought you were a mirage at first, a vision in white against the sand. Then I thought you were the bravest woman I'd ever seen, holding on to life in such circumstances. And I thought you were salvation itself," Bea admitted. "Not just because of the water you offered, but because of the kindness in your eyes even then. They returned to the ranch at sunset, riding side by side as they had countless times over 3 decades. The main house was filled with light and laughter. Their children and grandchildren had gathered for a surprise celebration. To Mom and Dad, Catherine toasted at dinner, raising her glass. Who taught us that love can bloom in the harshest places, and that true partnership means facing life's challenges together. That night, after the celebration had ended and the house was quiet, Wade and Bea sat on their porch swing, wrapped in a blanket against the cool evening air. The scene was reminiscent of that night long ago when they had first confessed their feelings for each other. 30 years, Wade mused, his arm around Bea's shoulders. If someone had told that young cowboy what awaited him after finding a bride abandoned in the desert, he never would have believed it. And if someone had told that frightened bride that her greatest happiness would come from the very circumstance that seemed like her end, she would have thought them mad, Bea agreed. Wade kissed her temple gently. I promise to keep surprising you, but I think life itself has done a better job of that than I ever could. Bea turned to face him, cupping his weathered cheek in her palm. You've kept every promise you ever made to me, Wade Ironwood, every single one. As the stars emerged in the vast New Mexico sky, Bea rested her head against Wade's shoulder, content in the knowledge that their love story begun in desperation, and strengthened through decades of shared joys and sorrows would live on not just in their memories, but in the legacy they had built together. From a bride left in the desert with no water and a cowboy who rode up with a canteen and his heart, they had created a dynasty of love that would endure long after they were gone. And in that knowledge, they found their greatest peace.